I knew it was inevitable as soon as I heard of the Tales series that I would play one of its games and really enjoy it, and then I would want to play the others and I'd dive into another JRPG franchise with a long history of games. I was prepared to enjoy Tales of Berseria, and it certainly met my expectations with regards to gameplay, storytelling, character development, you name it. My favorite genre is certainly the RPG genre, specifically JRPGs, which means it takes something to impress me given all the games in the genre I've played. Tales of Berseria is an impressive game on basically all fronts. Tales of Berseria is an action role-playing game developed by Bandai Namco and is the 16th entry in the Tales of series. I'm not jumping into the series late at all, what are you talking about? It released in August of 2016 in Japan for the PS3 and 4, and then worldwide for the PS4 and Windows in January of 2017. It was given positive reviews after release, mainly praising the story and characters, while pointing out certain difficulties for new players with the various systems they would need to learn. Although personally, as a new player, I never felt too overwhelmed with all these systems. Berseria is also a prequel to the previous game in the series, Zesteria, set far in that game's past. The other notable aspect of Berseria is that its protagonist, Velvet Crow, is the first solo female main character in the series' history. That's a good place to transition into talking about the story, because the story truly begins and ends with Velvet. You start the game with Velvet, her brother, and her brother-in-law living in the peaceful and idyllic fall-colored village of Abal. It's serene and sweet, and, well, it's a JRPG, so we all know this cannot last. The beginning does a great job, though, of setting up Velvet's life prior to the Advent, the event where it all went downhill. This makes her struggle to move past those events an even stronger narrative in the game's story. The time, though, isn't all sunshine and fall foliage, because demons are becoming a growing problem, attacking villages with only exorcists able to fight back with their control of Malakim lending them power. After the Advent, Velvet is imprisoned for 3 years on an island, her only contact being the demon sent down to her to devour with her now demonic red-clawed arm for sustenance. Eventually, though, she manages to escape, and her goal is singular throughout the rest of the game: revenge against the person responsible for the death of her brother and the loss of Abal. A person who now heads up the extremely powerful organization, the Abbey. The trials and tribulations of this journey will test Velvet to her core, but thankfully, she doesn't go through them alone. She is joined by a motley crew of characters as they learn the truth behind the events of that night, the Abbey's plans for the world, and the answer to the question, why do birds fly? This game's story is as strong as it is because of the superb writing, specifically the character writing. Seriously, this game has a compelling main cast. All 6 of the members of the main squad are well fleshed out and have strong dynamics with the rest of the cast, whether that is the other main characters, the villains, or the supporting characters. Speaking of which, the villains and supporting cast are also well written. The villains especially, which only adds to the strength of the party characters because of the connections between them and the various villains. This game's cast is among my favorite game casts already, and there really isn't one character I can point to as a weak link. They're all very good characters that I'm quite fond of. Despite being a dark game at times, the interactions between the party can be quite funny. I think this is another point in the favor of the writers because the characters behave realistically. It's not just doom and gloom all the time, and these funny moments were quite necessary to lighten the mood. If the main characters were not so strongly motivated and realized, the story itself wouldn't work. This story has a lot of moral gray area. Your party looks and occasionally acts like the typical bad guys, while the Abbey, the nominal villains, look like the good guys. That's also how most of the public sees it too, with many townspeople cursing out your party's deeds, unaware that the people they're cursing out are standing right next to them. There may even be doubts in the player's mind whether Velvet's rampage of revenge is just, and the game encourages those questions. The main conflict, though, given throughout the game is the argument of will versus reason. The Abbey bases its philosophy on reason, the good of the many, and the game deconstructs much of that argument. It also, though, deconstructs the actions of the party itself. No one is saved a thorough examination of the morality of their actions. And it works because the matter is treated with care through the lenses of characters struggling through that morality themselves. I can't say enough about the writing of this game. It executed a difficult balancing act of morality with strong characters on both sides of the argument. One thing with regards to the writing and character interactions I haven't mentioned yet are the skits. After completing story objectives or traveling to a new place, or simply because the game feels like it, there will be a pop-up in the lower part of the screen to indicate a new skit is available. These skits are performed in a little backdrop separate from the game screen, with characters expressing themselves on what I would call a mini-stage. They only show the top halves of characters though, and mainly get by with changing up expressions and body language. These skits can range from humorous to extremely serious and serve for world building and character building. As with the story in general, the skits are well written and performed, with the only slight issue of them occasionally dragging on longer than is strictly necessary. Otherwise though, they serve their purpose marvelously. The gameplay is standard JRPG fare, a main quest that evolves as the game goes on but never loses focus of the ultimate goal, for Velvet at least. There are some side quests, but there are fewer than one might expect from a JRPG. The side quests though usually add depth to the characters, the world, or both, so I encourage completing those if you have the time. You won't regret it. Exploration is another big part of the game where you run around the world in third-person perspective. This is also where you encounter enemies, but I'll get to that in a second. The exploration is nice with treasure chests, items, and other things to collect scattered around the map. However, at certain points, the exploration and travel gets to be a slog, one of the few issues I had with this game. There is a mid to late game item that helps with quicker travel and less monotonous exploration, but you still have to explore an area fairly thoroughly before you can activate the power for that area. There is also a collection of mini games that you can play that I resisted playing because there are so many that could occupy your time, and this game is fairly long as is. The games are fun, I promise you, I just wanted to focus on the main game. Combat is, of course, a huge part of the game as well. Encounters are initiated from the overworld screen with enemies roaming around in various areas. Most will charge at you when you are traveling around, regardless of your character's levels, and most battles begin on even footing. Attacking unaware enemies from behind gives you an advantage to start the battle, just as enemies attacking your party from behind give them an advantage. The system for combat Tales of Berseria uses is based off the linear motion battle system found throughout the Tales series. In the system, you can move about freely in the combat circle and rotate the camera whenever you need to. To defeat enemies, your 4 battle characters combine magical and physical attacks and skills called arts to deal damage. You can also sidestep attacks or guard to reduce damage taken from enemies. And of course, items and escaping are also options. Finally, since the party has generally 6 characters, there are opportunities where you can switch one of the out-of-combat party members in to gain a new advantage. As the player though, you can only really control one character at a time, although you could continue switching between characters in battle. Frankly, that's too much work for me, so I stick with one character generally and hope the AI doesn't mess things up, which actually wasn't the case for most of the battles I fought. Enemies fit into various different categories, such as winged, demi-human, fiend, dragon, beast, person, etc., and some fall into multiple categories. Your party then has skills that work well against particular enemy types, and your arts have elemental groups, which enemies may be weak to, although they also have resistance to certain elements as well. Finding enemies' weaknesses to exploit is a critical part of combat, because if you can chain together attacks and exploit those weaknesses, your party begins to snowball and your enemies stand no chance. Hopefully this section gives you an idea of how combat works, because there's so much more to it than I've discussed, including soul breaks and mystic arts. It's most fun though learning these for yourself, and the game does a good job of teaching all of these skills gradually as the game goes on. But I won't get into explaining all of the various mechanics, because if I did, we'd experience another Scarlet Knight by the time I was finished, so I'll just leave it off there for the time being. Equipment management was another area I've seen criticized, but I think it was handled quite nicely. There is an enhancement system that makes you balance between equipping new fancy items and trying to upgrade them versus keeping the not as good base items that you have spent a lot of time already upgrading. All this leads to some tough decisions in equipment of all places, and I had a lot of fun trying to maximize my item's utility. Visually, I'm quite impressed with Tales of Berseria. The game looks and controls very smoothly, and the varied environments stand out. The character designs are also quite good, with each character having a very distinctive outfit that suits their personality and style. That goes for the main cast, the villains, and the important supporting cast. The basic NPCs, though, are, well, basic, but that's still fine. The visuals look very nice, but take few chances, so I can see why some might call them generic. However, they still work for me. The animations, both in and out of battle, are high quality, to the point that I found the cutscenes involving the regular character models more impressive in motion and visuals than the animated cutscenes. Personal preference, though, because the animated cutscenes are also quite well done, just in a distinctly different style than the rest of the game. Musically, the game has a jaw-dropping opening song, which I think encapsulates the game itself, starting off traditionally serene before transitioning into an epic rock song that gets your blood pumping. The music in the rest of the game is solid, although unremarkable, but that opening song is right up there among my favorite game songs of all time, which is saying something. I will also say the character themes are, like the characters themselves, a highlight for the game with more personality than most of the other songs, although that's to be expected since most of the others are designed to be pleasant to hear while in the background and exploring. Performance-wise, the English cast put in some great work across the board. The main characters were all cast perfectly in my opinion and brought the script to life. I have no complaints on that front. However, there is one small thing that bothered me. I started noticing the occasional discrepancies between what the characters were saying and what the subtitles showed. I've encountered this a couple times in other games, so it usually wouldn't bother me, but in Tales of Berseria, I counted around a dozen instances of this happening. Some of these changes completely altered the meaning of the sentence as well. I don't know how this came about, but it's disappointing to see in a game that otherwise is quite polished. It mainly happened though in the character side quests toward the end of the game, so thankfully the main story was spared. Tales of Berseria was a delight to play, with a story that engaged me in new ways. It challenged the narrative norms of the JRPG, some of which the Tales series itself has played into before, according to people I've talked to. The story was impactful because the characters were so well realized, and it was easy to empathize and understand everyone's viewpoints. The gameplay was fun throughout. I wanted to test myself in combat against strong enemies and track down new locations and items, especially if they revealed new details about the characters. All this was backed up by a very polished aesthetic experience on the eyes and ears. Tales of Berseria is a strong introduction to me for the Tales series, to the point that I want to play more. Hopefully Berseria won't be the last new entry to the Tales series, but I guess for that, I will just have to wait and see. If you like story-rich JRPGs with strong casts and a deep gameplay system you can sink your teeth or giant demonic red claws into, then I recommend checking out this game. It was certainly a great way to start off my gaming gear. I hope this video was both informative and enjoyable. If it has, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. I hope you have a great day, and happy gaming.